Straight like cloud to the heart of the crowd. We're flipping the script, turning it around. Every voice we hear, every soul we find has a spark of truth that can change your mind. It's the reversal, turning it all upside down. The reversal, truth from the lost and found. Hope in the heartbreak, light in the rain. The reversal, you'll never see the same again. The reversal, the story's yours to tell.
Well, hello and welcome everybody to The Reversal and another episode with a very special guest. For those of you who haven't tuned in before or listened or watched any of our episodes, The Reversal is an investigation, a journey, a series of conversations where we believe that beauty, wisdom, profound truth is to be found in some of the least likely places. And my co-host, Dr. Sandy Shire here, and myself have spent many years doing life alongside people experiencing a series of complex, intersecting challenges, including being unhoused, walking through addiction, challenges with mental health. And many of the folks that we've encountered who've become friends, people that we consider a part of our community, have taught us some of the most profound truths that we have not encountered elsewhere. And today's guest is no different. Geoff Haney is a longtime friend and colleague. We work together, and Geoff continues to work in that sector, in the nonprofit sector, working with folks in the margins and those who are on a journey towards sobriety or not in their efforts to become housed and reduce some of the barriers that they're facing. So welcome, Geoff. Good to have you with us today.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Where do we want to start?
Well, I just want to invite our viewers and listeners to maybe suspend some of your beliefs and be open, and we invite you to maybe consider some new perspectives from our discussion. That's kind of one of my goals.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
For our goals for today. And I also just want to say, Geoff has one of the best trained dogs in the city.
Yeah, that is one thing you're going to discover in our conversation is that Geoff is known for his passionate care and devotion to his dogs. So that will come up. As will probably the noise of my dogs in the background trying to get in because they love Geoff and Sandy as well.
Yeah. So you're a father, a grandfather, a son, and I said a dog owner. Well, he owns you. She owns you more than you own her. Yeah, but we just want to thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And I feel really honored to be your friend and to hear your story. I think you have a lot to offer, and you make such a positive difference in our city. One person at a time, one meal at a time, one open door to housing at a time. So on behalf of our city, I say thank you. And so we want to hear your story. So why don't we just launch right in and just you tell us a bit of your story. Give us your bio, what you're doing now, kind of where you came from and how you ended up where you're at.
Well, I grew up in Medicine Hat, and that's an oil patch city. So I spent a lot of years in the oil patch, making big money, spending big money on lots of drugs. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. From Medicine Hat, I worked on and off in the oil patch for 25 years, and over 30 years of addiction alongside of that.
What were you doing in the oil patch?
I've done virtually everything. Okay. From I drove truck for years, fracked, cemented, perforated rigs,
a whole bunch
geophysical logging.
Wow.
Well maintenance, you name it, I've done it. So, yeah, it provided me a lot of knowledge.
And that was all through like your late teens, early 20s?
And even in my addiction, I was doing it too. I mean, I was working in the oil patch up until 2000.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And if memory serves, you at some point began to have a bit of notoriety in Medicine Hat. Tell us a little bit about that if you're comfortable.
Oh yeah, I mean, in reality, I started selling drugs there when I was in junior high.
Yeah.
Selling joints and LSD to people. And that progressed into much more serious drugs.
So what do you do now?
I'm a community support worker.
So what does that mean to the
To
average?
the listener, viewer, what does that mean?
I support the people on the street and then get them towards where they can get housing, help them, give them options.
So
That's a shocker, isn't it? I mean, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, we just jumped from dealing drugs in Medicine Hat and working in the oil patch to now you're supporting and working with people with compassion. We're going to have to join some dots here.
yeah, connect the dots for us. How did you get from the oil patch notoriety
The
to
drug notoriety?
to there's a major switch
Oh, yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, there was something that
e-
happened somewhere.
Eventually, my addiction just took over. So I left all work behind and everything and just to sell drugs and get high. But it got to a point where I wasn't really getting high. I was maintaining for years. I mean, for a long time, I wanted to work with people in their addictions, but I couldn't do it while I was practicing,
Right.
doing my research.
Doing your research.
Now, there was some, you jokingly referred to it as doing your research. I mean, I think, there's no doubt that you picked up transferable skills, but you also developed on maybe not knowing at the time, but you developed some incredible insight and knowledge, and there was your BS meter is well honed so that today no one can get one over you because you've lived that life, you've seen the worst of it, and so no one's pulling the wool over your eyes. But I would say, I remember years ago there was a time when you first shared with me, you were like, oh yeah, like there was a time when every cop in Medicine Hat knew my name.
Yeah, they probably still do. But some of them are actually on my Facebook now. And
That's amazing. Yeah.
oh, yeah.
There's been a lot of redemption and restoration in your story.
Tons. Yeah, I was a mess.
Cost you your family,
Yeah, well,
but you've restored that.
they were on the sidelines for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I have a good relationship with them now.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
So is there a turning point? Like you're in Medicine Hat, things are kind of like you said, you're maintaining, but you have some hopes for your life, but you're not able to offer people what you do today because you're in the midst of it yourself. Now, what happened? What was the order of things? Did you leave Medicine Hat and then things started to change, or did something happen that changed and then gradually you thought, I got to leave Medicine Hat?
Yeah, when I got busted.
Yeah.
I mean, I went for
That'll do it.
I went for 30 plus years without even a simple possession charge.
Right.
And then over a 2-year span, I had 34 narcotic convictions. So I ended up going to Drumheller, and I went to Drumheller in 2005 on a 2-year sentence. Did 20 out of 24 months, was out for 4 months and got busted again and did another 3 years. So essentially I did 3.5 years out of 5. And when I got out after the left on parole, I got out of Drumheller Pen as a plumbing apprentice. So I got working downtown Drumheller from the pen.
So they taught you that skill set in
Well, I mean, I already had the skill set
Okay.
of pipe fitting from the oil patch because I did a lot of pipe fitting
right.
there.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, and I did that for 2.5 years when I got out in Lethbridge, and then I relapsed.
Right.
So when I went to see my parole officer on my last visit, there was only 2 weeks left of my parole, and he's like, "You're not doing good, are you?" I said, "Nope, nope, I'm certainly not." He said, "Well, there's no sense in breaching you now. There's only 2 weeks left." So he just said, "Take care of yourself," and off I went.
Wow.
And then I found out that the police in Lethbridge were looking for me to charge me again. So I would have been looking at anywhere upwards of 10 years. So I got out of there.
Do you ever think on kind of how significant that exchange with that parole officer was? Because to me, that's like a sliding doors moment in your life. Like, had he said, no, I'm going to I'm going to, report you back rather than let you back out. Your life could have taken a completely different direction.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I would have got sent back in, I'm sure my attitude would have been totally different.
Yeah.
I have, since I got clean and sober, called the parole office in Lethbridge and let them know what I'm doing, and they're pretty happy.
Yeah.
That's
It
cool.
was definitely worth the gamble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love about you. You kind of go back and close the circle.
You got it.
You're good at paying it forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and actually that translates even, not only do you complete the circle and go back, but you're good at paying it forward, as in, you dedicated your life to walking alongside people that are very much in the same position you used to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had some friends invite you out to Kelowna.
Yeah.
Said come to Kelowna.
Yeah,
So you
and
came.
they didn't believe me that I was coming because April Fool's Day on the Greyhound.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they didn't believe, but till I got here.
And that was 2011. 11.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
April 1st, 2011.
Right.
But the last word is yours every time.
Okay. So now here we are, 2026. So, 15 years later, essentially. And life is very different
Oh, yeah.
than the day you got off that bus.
And it's funny, though, because I'm still working with the same type of people as I was selling drugs to. So, yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, I know
You're on
that
the other side.
this is corny, but I think that, you were dealing in something that was, causing death. And now you're dealing in a way that brings life.
I hope so.
We see it. We've seen it for the last decade and a half, right? As your journey has progressed. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, because you have such a unique perspective that our listeners and viewers we're hoping will benefit from. We know we have, right? And there have been so many times where your insight, your wisdom when we work together, of reading a room, of like, I would even say there was almost like a spidey sense that you have, when you can even tell when a fight is going to break out somewhere before there's any signs of it. Like, I remember there's times when you come up to me and said, oh, something's going to go down between that guy and that guy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're not even in the same part of the room. And you're like, no, but there's stuff going down that you can't see. And I learned to trust your intuition.
Oh, absolutely. Me too.
So that I would be like, oh yeah, you're the kind of the first person who's going to wave a flag to give me insight to know what's happening in the room. And that's a very unique gift.
Yeah, and I don't even realize it's a gift at times. It's just something natural for me.
Yeah.
Probably because I was part of that for so long. And yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious too. Like, I think that in those early days of your sobriety, there was a remarkable amount of tenacity, is a word we've used before, right? Where you're just like, you don't lead with aggression, but you're very firm, right? You know your boundaries. You're like, no, this is how I function. I'm not going to put up with any crap. But you don't come out of the gates sort of like a bull trying to intimidate people. You tend to lead with this kind of curious, there's a little bit of mystery to you. And I think that's why I think people, like when we talk about conventional wisdom, I think if there's something about you that's always stood out, is that there's nothing very conventional about you, right? Except for the stereotypes that, like, your body's covered in tattoos from head to toe. Can't tell today because you're pretty well clothed. And but summertime.
Thank you for being clothed.
Thank you for being clothed. But summertime, there's no doubt. And then of course you ride around on a Harley, and so those two things.
And I have pit bulls.
Yeah, and you have these sort of aggressive, but not actually aggressive dogs, but aggressive looking. And they you have this scenario where those kind of things would be very stereotypical and conventional. But then when you get to know you, you're not at all conventional. So where does that come from?
I don't even know. It just comes from being me.
Right.
I just got to be
His
real.
mom is
I just
very
have to-
gentle.
yeah.
Yeah. When you think back to your family system, is there a certain trait there that you can kind of see come through?
Well, I mean, there was always lots of love. I just rejected it for years. So, yeah, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
That is a hard one.
Do you feel like that? I just want to poke a little deeper and go like, because I know this is a topic that we've talked about before, but maybe not on camera or on a microphone. but the presence of love in your life has changed you. It seems to be.
Yeah.
You know, like, because you do operate with care and compassionate love.
Well, you get much more positive reactions with that. So, yeah. I was angry for years. Don't want to be angry.
Yeah, that's a poison all of its own, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you do, supporting those that are unhoused or just newly housed or whatever, is intense,
Can be.
highly demanding, emotionally life-sucking, you know, because you're always being pulled into crisis, things like that. And yet you've been doing it for 14 years. How do you take care of yourself? What's your self-care? What are your filters to know when you need to step back, or do you step back? And because obviously you're doing something right if you're still there 14 years later, because a lot of people can't do that.
No. I mean, I rest a lot. You know, summer I'm out on my bike, walking my dog. So yeah, I have to recognize when I'm getting to that point. And
What are the flags?
one of the biggest flags is getting angry at little things. You know, when I start getting angry at things that shouldn't make me angry, I know there's time to take some days off.
So that's your own inner filter.
Yeah.
That works that way. Wow. So our theme for today is about the proximity of, you know, being next to people, walking with them. You've spent years not only just advocating for people in finding housing, but you've actually been with people. And when we talk about proximity, in my opinion, that's where I see a lot of the beauty. I mean, that's where I have learned beauty. That's where I discovered strengths that didn't exist and learned so much. A lot of wisdom comes in that proximity, you know, and people have said, well, I love them at a distance, you know, like, oh, really? You know, I can't do that. Or people can't do that. But so there's a beauty in that proximity, but there's also some pain or some risk that goes with that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that proximity relationship looks like? The strengths of it, the beauties of it, the hard parts of it, the luxury of it?
Well, I mean, for starters, if you want to have that proximity, you need an open mind.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you go in there with your closed mind and thinking that all these people are this way, and they're not. The people on the street are good people. Are they messed up? Yeah. But they get stuck where they're at. And having the proximity gives us the opportunity to learn more about the individuals.
Get their story.
Yeah. And I mean, most of them just want to be heard. So if you can get out there and just sit with somebody and have a coffee, listen to their story, it'll open your eyes.
What about the urge to fix?
In the earlier days of my working at this job, it was strong, but I know I can't fix everybody.
Right.
So you just have to pull back and do what you can do.
Right. Show up.
Yeah. Just continue being there for people.
How do you continue?
Just get up and do it all over again every day. And I don't look at it like I have to go to work. I get to go to work.
Yeah, that's
beautiful.
That's a big shift. That's a big difference. You know, like when it's not when it's a privilege to be in people's lives, rather than, and I think the difference probably, and I heard you just say it, is that the proximity removes the temptation to make people a project. They suddenly become human and then you can't, you can't look away.
No.
You can't sort of shun or kind of ignore somebody when they're right in front of you, close, and they're breathing and they've got skin and they're real. I was thinking about misconceptions, right? So our podcast is called The Reversal, and it's about, challenging stigmas and preconceived ideas. And could we just tell some stories or hear some stories that challenge some of our notions of things that perhaps we've just taken for granted? And I wonder, somewhat along that same idea or that line of temptation to fix people, but it's that idea of like, what have these 14, 15 years of you being involved at Frontline, what has changed, or how has it changed your perception of people? And what do you think you could share with people who might just have a misunderstanding about folks who are unhoused or experiencing addiction? Like, what would you say to those folks that might have some pretty kind of reservations, or just some really sort of some stigmas, some preconceived
Judgments.
ideas, judgments, possibly fear?
They need to open their mind. We're all human. So everybody's basically a paycheck or two away from being on the street with people that I work with. Mm-hmm. I know I am. So you just have to allow yourself to realize that these are human beings. They're not.
That's not a one-time thing. That's like a constant reminder, because not all, a lot of people that struggle with addiction or have mental health or unhoused are not always in the healthiest frame of mind to be friendly, or, they've got their defense mechanisms. And so they're not very nice sometimes, or they're jerks.
I just tell them, come back and talk to me when they're ready. It's on them.
So that's your boundary.
Yeah.
Of how it's like, I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here.
Yeah. I can tell you what fixed me.
Yeah.
If I'm fixed. But yeah. So, I've always wanted to help people. Once I started, it's just the rewards in here are impossible to replicate. So, I just kept going with treating people as people instead of as objects.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. So you have a very unique voice, a remarkable set of lived experience and skills that have been an asset in your current role that we've talked about. Using that, how do you feel like, do you actually give advice?
If somebody wants it, yeah. I believe that you shouldn't offer advice unless somebody wants it.
Right. Like, you're respected basically on the street level and in the corporate level and in the social agency world. Mm-hmm. There's not many people that have that.
Yeah, for sure.
Very few.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't even realize that I have that most of the time. I realize the respect I get with the street community.
Right.
I take days off like today, and they're all asking, "Where's Geoff? Is he okay?"
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, though. Yeah.
And majority of the people out here now know that I came from that life. Right. So they know I have the street cred. Yeah. Actually, I just had a client come up to me the other day. I just found out you used to sell a lot of cocaine. I said, yeah. And it just happened to be a guy that I was in Drumheller Pen with, who's out here now, told him about me. And he's like, oh, really? So, yeah.
There's a relatability for people.
Yeah.
Which I think makes you safe, actually, for folks.
Oh, yeah. They've got my back. And
Yeah.
It's just I never worry about being out there with the people out there just because they're people.
Yeah.
Right.
If I'm going to worry about being out there with them, I better worry while I'm in the mall.
You've obviously your journey, like we've talked about longevity, you know, I was involved in frontline work for almost identically the amount of time that you're kind of talking about now, like 15 years, 14 years. And it's like, there is a toll. There's a toll on your body. There's a toll in terms of compassion fatigue. And we've talked about, you know, you talked about needing to have boundaries to, you know, look after yourself and avoid burnout. But there are also countless stories. I mean, you and I, we've all talked about that. You know, every time we get together, that's all we talk about. We're sharing stories about mutual friends and people we care about. And some are sad, some are good, but we can laugh a lot. We have some dark senses of humor because
Pretty much have to.
because we have to. It's a survival mechanism. But like, you know, as you think back over the decade and a half since you're arriving, you know, this city, and you've had this incredible journey in sobriety, but also in service, like, are there some highlights that you think about where you're like, oh yeah, there's some ones that stand out that, you know, maybe it's, you don't have to mention actual names, but maybe it's even a season or a type of realization. I don't know. There's some highlights that you can think of.
I mean, I get people coming back and thanking me. Those are pretty big highlights. They make my job worthwhile. So, I mean, I do see people getting into recovery and excelling at it. Those are big highlights. I was just telling you about a girl that used to hang out at Metro who's now a Red Seal carpenter in Vancouver. So that's a pretty big highlight. You know, she used to come down and see me down at the mission when I was working there and thank me for being there at Metro all the time that she was there and say that we need more people like you on the street, Geoff. That's a pretty big highlight.
Yeah.
So what does she mean by a person like you?
With the experience, lived experience. You can't bullshit the people out there, because I know when I was going early counseling when I was 18, 19, and I had a drug counselor tell me they know how I feel, I would ask them, you ever stick a needle in your arm? No, well then you don't know how I feel, so don't even say that. And that would end our counseling session because, yeah.
You just called them out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I guess because one question I would have even around the lived experience thing is that there was a time when, I mean, that term has become a buzz term, right?
For sure.
A lot of organizations will do things where they say, oh yeah, but we're engaging lived experience. And they might have a little round table where they bring some people in and they listen to them or they record their responses. But it's another thing to have somebody with a tremendous amount of life lived, truly lived experience, who then has a voice. Like when we work together, the most critical, and I mentioned it earlier, like you were somebody I respected and listened to. So it wasn't a token gesture. It was like, no. This person is somebody who is mentoring me in the ways of this culture, right? So I may have other responsibilities in the organization, but in terms of understanding the culture of the street and the culture of folks who are engaged in addiction and who are experiencing homelessness, I would turn to someone like you and go, no, I'm going to pay attention. You're going to call the shots in that room. Like I'm going to be the one who's listening to you because you are mentoring me in the ways of that culture, because I've never lived it. So going back to the question is, how do organizations avoid, like, what is it? How do they avoid just doing token symbolic stuff around lived experience versus actually having the voice of lived experience at the heart of what they're doing?
For starters, they need to hire more people with lived experience. Because, I mean, textbooks all fine and dandy, but the textbook doesn't teach you the streets. So without being out there, you don't know, you know. That's a hard question, because I think they just need to be hiring more lived experience.
Yeah.
I think I was one of the first lived experience hired in Kelowna.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
At least for, you know, in terms of, and also somebody who actually stuck around in that role and gained the kind of respect and the longevity that Sandy was describing earlier for you. But I also wonder, I actually think there's something about what you discovered in that I think my observation was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think along the way somewhere, you seem to have discovered that it was your superpower. No one told you that.
Yeah,
No one hired you, but I think you kind of stumbled into it, and I see that now. I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's not, if there isn't something that you have that is, more organizations should try and harness, which is that understand, because we can't take credit for you discovering that it was your superpower. I think you did that all by yourself, but I would go, but now I wonder how many other Geoff Haneys are out there who don't realize they're carrying a superpower.
Well, I didn't realize it was a superpower either, but there's probably lots out there. I know there's just about everybody that's in recovery wants to work.
Yes.
And they're not all ready for it. Mm-hmm. I've seen, in the last 14 years, I've seen several people, pardon me, in recovery, and I mean, people with 5, 6, 7 years start working in this line and relapse. So
that's the walking miracle.
Well, kind of an anomaly.
Well, that is true too.
Yeah.
As you reflect back, what's one of the hardest challenges of this choice, this career choice, this kind of place of life that you live? And then what are some of the things that you're looking forward to most in the future? So looking back and looking forward.
Wow. Some of the hardest? Mm-hmm. Well, obviously being around the drugs can be hard. Mm-hmm. What was the second part?
Looking forward. What are you looking forward to?
Continuing to watch people grow. Yeah.
What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? Probably my sobriety. Yeah. Without my sobriety, I wouldn't have any of this.
Yeah, and the reason why we wanted you on this podcast is because you are a unique character. You have a unique story, and I think we have a lot to learn from you. I hope that our viewers, not only, have you, find, Geoff fascinating, but I'm really hoping that his story challenges some of the preconceived ideas we have about people in their journey in addiction and then sobriety, and what the future potentially holds, and the compassion with which, Geoff, you move through the world, the care that you have for people, it's infectious. It's a good infection.
Good.
I think you could have, and for some seasons, used your gifts and skills for probably not the best things in the world, but those transferable skills are now very powerfully employed in bringing people hope and bringing people inspiration, and your life stands in many ways for people as an example of what could be. And I think that is a very powerful thing. And I know you don't let it get to your head. You're a humble dude, and you take it in your stride. But I think that, I want to publicly, because this is a public forum, I want to publicly acknowledge that, that we consider a privilege that we get to be your friend and that you trust us in your life and with your story. And thank you for coming and trusting us with your story here today.
Okay, I have one last question.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would want to redo?
Nope.
That's a great question.
If I was to go back and redo things, who would I be now? I feel blessed to know you two too. You two were part of my path in the early days when I first got here. Because without me going to Metro, my first Sunday in town, in a bar, so it was in the Habitat bar.
Yeah, I remember that day we met for the first time.
I'm like, wow. Because I always said that I was a non-believer up until that point, and I thought, you know what? If there was a Jesus, where would he be? He'd be sitting in the bar here with all the street people. So I admired that with you guys, and you guys taught me a lot too.
Any last, you have one opportunity to get your message out to the viewers and listeners. What would be the one takeaway that you want them to take away?
You got to remember that it can happen to anybody. And if you feel yourself starting to look down on any street people, think to yourself, what if that was my son? What if that was my daughter? You wouldn't want people to do that to your son or your daughter or your mom or dad, because it could be anyone. So open your minds, realize we're all human. We all make mistakes. I like to think I don't make mistakes anymore. I have lessons.
Yeah, there you go. Those are good. That's good.
Yeah, what a great way to end that.
Yeah, I was
That's
going to say
good.
that's the perfect ending. So thank you, Geoff. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for joining us on, again, the Reversal Podcast. It's another great session.
Yeah, we'll see you again soon.
Cool. Thank you.
Where the last word is yours.
Okay, well, here we are again. Another fantastic episode. Yeah, what are your thoughts coming out of that?
Well, you know, I feel trite a little bit in saying that I feel honored when people are willing to share their stories in that vulnerable way with us. But it's true. Geoff and I always feel like we didn't do enough service to actually who he is, to understand the transformation. Or transformation is maybe not the word. It's like believing in the inherent goodness of a person,
Right.
right? And calling that goodness and beauty out. And I think that's what his story is like he was always wanted to help people.
Right. He expressed that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But yet the translation of that wasn't always the healthiest expression of, right, helping.
Well, and I think that for those of you who are watching, this is, first of all, this is not a professional gig for us, but it's also not a professional gig for him. He's such a humble guy. And it takes courage just to come and talk about himself, which is not something he does a lot of. And none of our guests do, frankly.
No.
And so I think it's worth remembering that, this is somebody who spends his entire day focused on others.
Yes.
And now we put him in the spotlight and start asking him deep questions, philosophical questions about what motivates him and how he got into all of this. And yet I think you're absolutely right. It is hard to do justice in a 30, 40-minute time slot to the impact that someone is having. And someone like Geoff, who just has this really humble kind of compassionate way in the world that it's not self-aggrandizing. No. He is not somebody, he is somebody who has gained tremendous amount of respect. Like, I enjoy speaking well behind his back because he has gained tremendous respect, not just because he's a warm character or he's just nice. He's not always nice. He's sometimes, in that sense, he has the capacity to be very firm with people. Yeah. But I think he's also gained this incredible respect because he operates with deep compassion, because he chooses to sit with people and to hold space for them and to allow, he mentioned this where he said, I just want people to know that they've been heard. And I was like, he does that well.
He does do that well. Yeah. He's a very unique character, and I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for what he does. Mm-hmm. And again, I can't understate the respect that he has on the street.
I think there's one thing that I wanted to discuss with you about that. The complicated idea of, integrating the valued voice, the critical voice of lived experience, but then trying to figure out when is the right time to do that. I mean, we were very fortunate that Geoff was so resolute in his journey But he could have just as easily have, as he mentioned, other people have, right?
Right.
6,
Relapsed.
7 years into their sobriety and still relapsed. Now, I don't think there's ever a perfect time to integrate somebody into that work, even if they don't have an addictions history, but or lived experience. But, you know, was there anything that stood out to you about that conversation or some thoughts around that?
Can I have more questions?
Yeah.
Like, what are the hallmarks? Like, what are the traits that you're never going to get a guarantee of success, but what is it? Like, I think he undervalues his willpower
And character. So perhaps the hallmarks aren't really so much about the time frame of sobriety.
No, I
Maybe
think
it's
it's
more
character.
to do with character.
I think it has to do with character.
And that's a tough one if you don't know someone well. I think that's, and the key difference for Geoff, I think, is that he chose to operate quite transparently in community, allowing people to get to know him,
Yeah.
allowing people to see his journey, and being vulnerable with it. I mean, I think that, I see now that he's obviously lost a lot of people he cares about, and the toll of this kind of work, the emotional toll of this work, he's no different than anyone else. I mean, he's been impacted by it. He's been affected by loss and grief, but he still somehow maintained this positive disposition, this sort of hopefulness. He still carries hopefulness.
Yeah. He reminded me of a quote that Napoleon once said, that leaders are dealers of hope.
Yeah.
Right?
Wonderful.
Yeah. You know what? We talked about conventional and unconventional. So Geoff has lots of certifications, like mental health, first aid, all those different certifications that are really good to have and helpful. He didn't go the formal education route. And if he had gone the formal education route, he wouldn't be doing what he was doing, I don't think.
Unpack that a bit more for our viewers and listeners. Why do you think that is?
Well, I know from a couple of other friends that we had that went into the formal education, to become a human service worker or a social worker, they didn't make it.
Right.
The pressures of study were too much.
The conventional academic framework.
The conventional academic framework to be able to have the credentials to do that work.
Right.
That system for a lot, or for a few that I know, didn't work.
Yeah.
Like the pressures of that didn't work. And the other one was she didn't even qualify. Even if she had gotten, she couldn't get in because of her record, her criminal record. She wasn't allowed to go into that service worker program.
Well, and so much of the academic, and this is, we have a deep respect for the academic programs that exist, but I think that it's not a one size fits all.
No.
And when you have somebody like Geoff with a unique life story, and who showed up at a particular point in his life, even an age in his life, that, it probably wouldn't have, I imagine he would have wanted to have much more immediate impact, or, be able to actually be involved with people at a level that he just happened to be fortunate that organizations invested in him, saw in him something, and chose to invest in him in different ways. So he very, very much got to that sort of support worker state in a sort of through a backwards route, essentially. He came through a backdoor route kind of thing.
And I think having relationship, being a friend of his for so many years and working alongside him. And, I did develop street cred, but it was because I kept on showing up every day. But I never got to the level like he just got off the top.
Absolutely.
But I also learned, Lori, that in that process, I'm not called to be that person.
No.
I'm not called to that role. I was called to walk beside people that were in their addiction, who were leaders or are leaders, and become friends with them and give them the support that they needed so that they could be the support on the street, in the lane, in the alley, and they had a resource that they could call
Yeah.
or leverage for support.
100%. And I think that for me, to add to that would be that because through you, through others, I was able to see that I didn't need to be Geoff.
Right.
You know, I could never be Geoff.
No.
And it would be detrimental to try and claim any of that or pretend to be that. But at the same time, there was this incredible, beautiful exchange where I could support him in his role. But then, as I mentioned in the interview, I really came to regard him as a mentor in terms of
for sure.
interpreting that culture and helping me understand my friends on the street and where they were, you know, how their very unique perspective of the world.
Yeah.
And what they had encountered and the incredible pain that many of them had experienced and the trauma that they were living with. And, you know, I think in any context, be it cross-cultural from a, you know, international standpoint or whatever, to have the eyes to see, you often need an interpreter. You often need a guide.
That's true.
And to truly get a true depth of experience. And we were very fortunate to have Geoff as one of our mentors and guides and interpreters in the street culture.
Yeah. And I think if, you know, the other piece of hope that I took out of his sharing today was, and it was just really brief, but he was talking about how he grew up in a home of love, but he chose to reject it.
Right.
For a period, right? His family, he sidelined his family because of the drugs, which is what drugs do. That's basically the essence of addiction.
Yeah.
But the story's never over. So for families, parents, children, siblings who have one of your loved ones struggling, and that you have loved them and you have loved them well, don't give up hope. Just keep on. Never give up, because Geoff's a walking testimony.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Profound. Yeah. Well, folks, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
For joining us, and be sure to tune in. We have a number of more episodes in our series, and we look forward to more stories like Geoff's and other reversals that challenge our ideas and notions that might just turn a few things on their heads, where we find beauty and truth and wisdom in the most unlikely places.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Stories yours to tell.